Good evening again, my fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Good evening.
So this is the meat of the meeting, where you had the appetizer first. No is the answer. All right. This is where we have our prepared speeches. Our first speaker tonight is no other than Mr. Gerry Regan. To go over Mr. Regan's objective, we do have his evaluator in no other than Miss Catherine Meluski. Please stand and give us Gerry's.
I'm excited to evaluate your speech, Gerry. This is the touching story. So it's Project 4, so I'm guessing that's your fourth speech?
No, this is actually an advanced manual.
Oh.
Storytelling.
Sorry, okay.
Yes.
It's not the fourth speech. It's the touching story, and the objectives are to, 1, understand the techniques available to arouse emotion, and 2, become skilled in arousing emotions while telling a story. And the time limit is 6 to 8 minutes.
Okay, all right.
So, hey Gerry, this is Dr. Chaudhury. Hey Gerry, this is Dr. Chaudhury, Mr. Gerry Regan.
And everyone's.
Yeah, I don't know. If you're there, this is Dr. Chaudhury. Hello. Hello. Anybody? Gerry?
In everyone's existences, there are points of no return. Times when we know our lives are changed forever. Today, my fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests, I will turn to one of those moments and explore the ensuing events that for the past 15 years continue to haunt me. My mom, pictured here, turned 84 on December 11th, 2003. It was 76 days later that subsequent events occasioned that voicemail message from her physician, Dr. Chaudhury. Now, 2 days after my mom's birthday, she stumbled and fell in the bathroom, and she fractured her wrist. She was whisked away by ambulance to Winthrop Hospital. I caught up with my mom 3 or 4 hours later, and I remember she was prone on a gurney. There must have been a dozen or so other patients there. A maelstrom of activity. My mom was very quiet, and I thought at rest, or resting. Now I want to say this about my experience. I've had a number of mothers. My first mother, whom I named Mère, French word for mother, relinquished me for adoption within a week of my birth. Then I was turned to the gentle ministrations of a boarding mother whose task was to wean me until I was ready for adoption. Upon my 6th month, I was brought home finally to my adoptive parents, who have come to know as mom and dad, where I joined my adoptive sister Laura in a tidy suburban village on Long Island. My mom, by virtually all accounts, was beautiful and gracious, but she was an alcoholic. She had the disease of alcoholism. She abused alcohol. She was a binge drinker. This caused in my life, and that of my sister and my dad, a huge amount of Sturm und Drang. And the impact has lasted virtually all my life. Now, after my mom's fall and her subsequent fracture, she was in the hospital for 5 days. When she came home, she did well for a time. But within 5 weeks, she began to fail. She ceased to talk, and then she ceased to walk. Fast forwarded another month, on February 19th, 2004. My dad and I found my mom leaning over the arm of the couch in what we called the TV room. She was listless and drooling. And I nearly forgot to mention that she had, several weeks prior, stopped eating and drinking, unbeknownst to us. The process of self-denial was very, very subtle. So we called an ambulance who whisked her away to Winthrop Hospital for her final journey. On February 24th, 5 days later, my dad and I and my niece Kim visited my mom in her room in the hospital, very uncertain as to what we would find. 2 days prior, she showed signs of rallying. She was communicative. She seemed comfortable. The following day, we found her in severe distress. And much more to our discomfort, we found signs of neglect by an inattentive staff. So when we arrived that night, which was to be her final night, February 24th, we were astounded and greatly pleased to find my mom smiling and welcoming. Through her oxygen mask, she smiled, and I remember vividly seeing my mom's eyes for the first time in weeks and really months. Her eyes listened, and they beckoned, and they seemed to me as deep as the oceans and as eternal. I was really drawn by them. And I thought to myself, was this the miracle I had been praying for? We spoke with her for a while. It was awkward because she was wearing a mask and her breathing was labored. But we spoke for a bit, and then we departed fully confident that we would see each other again. I dropped my dad off at the house, and I continued on to my apartment in Astoria. I fell asleep. It was at 3:35 a.m. that I got that voicemail message from Dr. Chaudhury, who was very measured and sleepy and empathetic and alarming, because I had an omen getting a call at that time of night. So he called back and suggested I go to the hospital because my mom had died. I hopped into a cab, grabbed the LIRR, made my way to Winthrop Hospital, where I arrived at 5:40 a.m. It was dark. I proceeded up to the ward. I was greeted by a male nurse who told me that my mom had died sometime after midnight. And the imposition was really quite startling to me. And he added, she was by herself. Now, I've been deathly afraid of abandonment for most of my adult life, having had 3 mothers. So when I heard that my mom died by herself, I was greatly alarmed and startled. And I also want to mention too that amongst the options we considered for my mom when she was ill, or was she lay in her hospital bed and she wasn't eating, was a gastric tube, which we rejected. The other option was to palliative care, to make her comfortable and just let her scheme play out. That was the option that we realized she had chosen for herself at my dad's home weeks earlier. So when I think now, and when I went to my mom's bedside, there were roses we had brought. plucked the rose petals and I placed them carefully over her bed and over her body. I went down the stairs, rushed out the door. Sunshine was pouring through the full-length windows of the hospital, and I suddenly remembered, today is Ash Wednesday. Follow it, like Toastmaster? Toastmaster.
Take a second to just to notify you that that was from a storytelling manual. In Toastmasters, we have different manuals that we present from. That speech was from the storytelling manual. Please take a moment to give Mr. Regan some feedback on the form before you